powerful man in a $10,000 suit thought his money gave him the right to break a black waitress. He picked the wrong woman. In the next 5 minutes, her response would not just silence him. It would detonate his entire empire. The morning sun slanted through the wide blinds of the Sunrise Diner, striping the worn linoleum floor in gold. It was a place caught between decades. On the walls, faded black and white photographs of Chicago's steel-boned skyline hung beside a gleaming, modern touchscreen register. The air was a rich tapestry of smells. The dark, nutty aroma of freshly ground coffee, the sweet and savory sizzle of maple-cured bacon, and the faint, clean scent of lemon polish from the morning wipe down. In the background, a low, moody jazz saxophone wept from hidden speakers. At the center of this calm, controlled world was Maya. At 30, her face held a quiet story of too many early mornings and too many late nights. Her hair was pulled back into a series of neat, intricate cornrows that framed a face defined by high cheekbones and eyes that saw everything but revealed little. She wore the diner's uniform, a retro, pale blue dress with a crisp white apron, with an air of professional dignity. Her movements were an economy of grace, a silent ballet. She performed 8 hours a day. She refilled coffee mugs, cleared plates, and took orders with a precision that bordered on art. She didn't offer fake smiles, but her service was always impeccable, her voice low and respectful. This Tuesday was like any other, a steady hum of quiet breakfast meetings and solitary diners lost in their newspapers. Until he walked in, he didn't so much enter the diner as he did impose himself upon it. He was tall, dressed in a charcoal gray suit so perfectly tailored it seemed to have been woven onto his frame. A sliver of a watch, an A Lang & Son, peeked from his cuff, a subtle, devastatingly expensive statement. This was Julian Croft. He scanned the room with an air of bored appraisal, his lips set in a permanent, faint sneer, as if the entire world were a slight disappointment. He chose a booth by the window, sliding onto the red vinyl seat without removing his suit jacket. Maya approached, a coffee pot in one hand, a menu in the other. "Good morning, sir. Coffee." Julian waved a dismissive hand at the pot. "Don't be absurd. You don't actually serve that drip brew tar, do you? I trust you have a siphon." Maya didn't blink. "We do. It's a 10-minute brew." "Fine. I'll wait," he said, not looking at her, already dismissing her as part of the furniture. He didn't open the menu she placed on the table. He already knew what he wanted, and he knew it would be beneath his standards. As Maya turned to prepare the elaborate glass contraption, she could feel his eyes on her back. It was a familiar feeling, that cold, analytical gaze that wasn't seeing a person but an object, a functionary to be judged. She'd felt it 1,000 times before. From a man who left a tip of 3 pennies, to the woman who'd snapped her fingers at her as if calling a dog. Maya had built a fortress around her spirit, brick by patient brick. She focused on the task, the precise measurement of the beans, the bloom of the hot water. It was a science, a ritual, and for a few moments, it was a shield. The diner continued its gentle rhythm, but a subtle tension had been introduced. The couple in the next booth lowered their voices. The man at the counter looked up from his phone, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. They all felt it. The air had changed. The storm was gathering. 10 minutes later, Maya delivered the siphon-brewed coffee. The presentation was flawless. A small, elegant carafe of steaming, fragrant liquid, a porcelain cup, raw sugar cubes, and a tiny pitcher of fresh cream, all arranged on a small silver tray. She placed it on his table with a steady hand. "Your coffee, sir." Julian eyed the setup, then took a sip. His face contorted as if he'd just tasted poison. He set the cup down with a sharp clatter that cut through the jazz music. "Incredible," he said, his voice a low, theatrical growl. "You've managed to ruin even this. It's tepid. Do you have any concept of temperature control?" Maya's internal fortress held. "I can brew another for you, sir. I assure you the water was at the correct temperature." "Don't," he snapped, his voice rising, drawing more eyes. "Don't make excuses. It's a hallmark of your type, an inability to accept responsibility." The word hung in the air, type. It was a small word, but it was loaded. Maya felt the first brick in her fortress tremble. She kept her expression neutral, a mask she had perfected over 15 years in the service industry. "I'm sorry you're not satisfied, sir." "Satisfied?" He laughed, a short, ugly bark. "My dear woman, satisfaction is a standard you couldn't possibly comprehend. This isn't about the coffee anymore. It's about a fundamental lack of competence. It's about people being put in positions they're not equipped to handle." He was leaning forward now, his voice a weapon aimed directly at her. The diner had gone quiet. Forks were frozen halfway to mouths. The cook, a burly man named Sal, peeked through the service window, his brow furrowed. "You people," Julian continued, his voice dripping with condescending pity. "You come here looking for a handout, a leg up. You think this uniform is a costume that will make you equal. But you don't do the work. You don't have the discipline. You don't have the breeding." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Breeding. The word was a slap. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, a furious blush she prayed wasn't visible. Her hands hidden behind her back, clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms. She remembered her mother, a nurse who worked double shifts, telling her, "Hold your head high, baby girl. Your dignity is the one thing they can never take unless you give it to them." But Julian wasn't done. He saw the flicker of pain in her eyes and pressed his advantage. "Let me give you some advice," he said, leaning back with the magnanimous air of a king educating a peasant. "Success isn't given. It's earned. It's built on generations of education, of culture, of understanding nuance. It's something you simply wouldn't understand. You're a waitress, a server. Your function is to bring me things. And you can't even do that properly. What does that say about you?" A young man in university hoodie in the corner booth slowly, almost imperceptibly, raised his phone. Maya's lips parted. She wanted to scream. She wanted to list her struggles. The community college courses she took at night, the second job she worked cleaning offices, the sick mother she was supporting. She wanted to tell him that her dignity wasn't for sale, and it wasn't up for his evaluation. But all that came out was a tight, strangled whisper. "Please, sir, you're making a scene." "I am making a point," he corrected her, his voice booming through the silent diner. "And my point is this. You are out of your depth." He gestured around the room. "This whole charade is, know your place." That was the final blow. The fortress crumbled. The bricks turned to dust. All that was left was raw, exposed, and trembling rage. The phrase "know your place" echoed in the cavernous silence of the diner. It wasn't just an insult. It was an erasure. It was the voice of every person who had ever looked past her, dismissed her, or devalued her. It was the sum of 1,000 tiny cuts that had finally bled her spirit dry. For a split second, Maya's world narrowed to a single point. Julian Croft's smug, triumphant face. The jazz music faded away. The scent of coffee disappeared. The other patrons blurred into indistinct shapes. There was only him, and the towering arrogance that sought to crush her. Her body moved on pure, unadulterated instinct, a primal response to an existential threat. It wasn't a thought. It was a release. In one fluid, shockingly graceful motion, she took a half step back, creating space. Her body pivoted on the ball of her left foot, her right leg sweeping upwards in a clean, powerful arc. It was a move of startling precision, more like a dancer's than a brawler's. The hard leather heel of her black loafer, designed for durability and long hours on her feet, became a weapon. Thwack! The sound was sharp, definitive, and sickeningly clear. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a gunshot. The heel connected perfectly with the underside of Julian Croft's chin. His head snapped back with brutal force. His eyes, a moment ago filled with condescending superiority, widened in pure, unadulterated shock. A grunt of pained surprise escaped his lips. He was no longer a predator. He was just a man who had been struck. Time seemed to stutter. For a long moment, no one moved. No one breathed. The entire diner was a frozen tableau of disbelief. Then, gravity reasserted itself. Julian stumbled backward, his arms flailing uselessly. He crashed into the side of his booth, the impact rattling the sugar dispenser. He slid down the vinyl seat, slumping into a heap of expensive tailoring and wounded pride. He sat there, dazed, his mouth agape, a thin trickle of blood beginning to seep from where his teeth had cut into his lower lip. Humiliation washed over his features, a stark and ugly replacement for his earlier arrogance. The collective gasp of the diner was a tidal wave of sound rushing into the vacuum. Someone dropped a fork with a loud clatter. A woman in the back let out a small, sharp scream. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "Call the police." Another man yelled from the back, though his voice lacked conviction. The student in the corner had not lowered his phone. The small red light was still on, capturing every second. But no one moved to help Julian. No one rushed to his side. They just stared, their faces a mixture of shock, fear, and for some, a flicker of something else. Grim satisfaction. Maya stood over him, her chest heaving. The adrenaline was a roaring fire in her veins. Her hands were shaking now, the mask of composure completely gone, but her eyes were locked on his. They were clear, burning, and utterly without fear. "You don't own me," she said, her voice low but carrying to every corner of the silent room. Each word was a perfectly shaped shard of ice. "You don't own anyone, and you will never, ever tell me to know my place again." The spell of silence shattered. The diner erupted into a cacophony of hushed, frantic whispers. Julian Croft, still slumped in the booth, touched his chin gingerly, his fingers coming away with blood. His face, pale with shock, was now flooding with a dark, mottled red of pure fury. He struggled to his feet, using the table for support, his entire body trembling with rage. "You're finished," he seethed, his voice a ragged hiss. He pointed a shaking finger at Maya. "Do you hear me? Finished. Do you have any idea who I am? I'm Julian Croft. I will own you. I will sue you, this pathetic excuse for a diner, and everyone in it. You will never work in this city again. You'll be scrubbing toilets for the rest of your miserable life." Maya didn't flinch. The fire in her eyes hadn't dimmed. "I've worked 2 jobs my whole life just to stand still," she shot back, her voice ringing with a strength she didn't know she possessed. "I'm not afraid of work, and I'm not afraid of you. You can't take anything from me that you haven't already tried to." From a corner booth, a slow, deliberate clap started. It was an older man in a worn tweed jacket. Then another person joined in, and another. Soon, a scattered, hesitant applause spread through one half of the diner, a quiet rebellion against the man in the expensive suit. About damn time someone put him in his place, a man at the counter muttered into his coffee. The main door of the diner swung open, and a blast of cool city air swept inside. A woman stood silhouetted in the doorway. She was tall and impeccably dressed in a navy blue trench coat and sharp heels that clicked with authority on the linoleum. Her face, framed by a severe blonde bob, was etched with concern and extreme annoyance. "Julian?" she called out, her voice sharp and clear. "What in God's name is going on? I've had 5 calls in the last 2 minutes. 5. From board members." This was Eleanor Vance, Julian's executive vice president and chief strategy officer. Her presence instantly shifted the atmosphere from a public spectacle to a corporate crisis. Julian's head snapped toward her. "Eleanor, thank God. This animal." He gestured wildly at Maya. "She assaulted me. Unprovoked. Call legal. Call the police. We're pressing full charges." Eleanor's gaze swept the room, taking in the scene with a rapid, chillingly efficient assessment. Julian's disheveled state, Maya standing her ground, the silent, watching patrons, and the damningly obvious red recording light on the student's phone. "No, Julian," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "We're not." She walked toward him, pulling her own phone from her coat pocket. "We're not calling anyone, because it's too late. It's already everywhere." She turned the screen of her phone toward him. A live feed was playing. It was a shaky, amateur video, but the audio was crystal clear. It showed the entire exchange, starting with his condescending remarks about the coffee and escalating into his tirade about her type. And then, the stunning, silent climax of the kick. This was posted 7 minutes ago. Eleanor said, her voice tight with controlled fury. "It currently has 1.2 million views. The hashtag Diner King is trending. In the comments, Julian, they're not on your side. They are calling you a racist, an abuser, a monster. Our primary sponsor for the new tech campus just put their billion-dollar deal under review pending an internal investigation into our company's culture. Julian stared at the screen, his face draining of all color. The rage was replaced by a dawning, sickening horror. I was provoked, he stammered, the words sounding weak and pathetic even to his own ears. Eleanor didn't even blink. No, Julian, she said, her voice dropping to an icy whisper. You were exposed. Eleanor Vance let the weight of her words settle in the silent diner. She was no longer just an executive. She was an executioner. Her gaze shifted from Julian's ashen face to Maya, who stood rooted to the spot, her body still trembling with the aftershocks of adrenaline. For the first time, Eleanor's expression softened, just slightly. Ms., she began, her tone professional but not unkind. Maya, she supplied, her voice barely a whisper. Maya, Eleanor repeated, nodding. On behalf of Croft Enterprises, I am profoundly sorry for what you just endured. No one should ever be subjected to that kind of abuse. I would like to speak with you privately when you're ready. Maya's throat was tight. She had expected to be fired, arrested, or both. She had braced herself for a fight she couldn't win. This quiet, formal apology was more disarming than any threat. I don't want money, Maya managed to say, the words feeling heavy and inadequate. I'm tired. I'm tired of being invisible until someone decides to make me their target. You shouldn't have to be, Eleanor said simply. Her eyes held Maya's for a moment, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Then, she turned back to Julian, her face hardening once more into a mask of corporate steel. The final act was about to begin. You can't do this, Eleanor, Julian hissed, trying to rally some of his old authority. This is a private matter. We'll release a statement. A carefully worded apology. It will blow over. This stopped being a private matter the moment you decided to publicly humiliate this woman, Eleanor countered, her voice rising to command the room. She wasn't just speaking to Julian anymore. She was addressing the entire diner, and by extension, the millions watching online. And it will not blow over. Because this isn't just about today. The board has been concerned for months. Your erratic behavior, your alienation of partners, your temperament. This was merely the final, public confirmation of what we already knew. Julian staggered back, as if she had physically struck him. The board? They work for me. No, Julian. They work for the shareholders. Eleanor corrected him calmly. And as of an emergency vote conducted via text message 20 minutes ago, they have appointed me interim CEO of Croft Enterprises, effective immediately. You are hereby relieved of all duties and responsibilities. Your security access has been revoked. You are to vacate your office by the end of the day. A collective, audible gasp swept the room. It was a corporate assassination carried out in the middle of a greasy spoon diner. Sal the cook, still watching from the kitchen pass, slowly shook his head in disbelief. The student's phone was still recording, capturing the complete and utter implosion of Titan. All of this because of a waitress. Julian whispered, his voice cracking, his empire crumbling around him in a haze of coffee-scented air. Eleanor looked from Maya's proud, tired face back to his broken one. No, Julian, she said, delivering the final, devastating verdict. This is because of you. She was just the one who was brave enough to stand up and show the world who you really are. He stared at her, then at Maya, then at the silent, judging faces of the other customers. There was no support here, no allies, no escape. Defeated, he turned and stumbled toward the door, a man who had lost everything in the time it took to drink a cup of coffee. He pushed the door open and disappeared into the city, leaving behind the wreckage of his own making. In the deafening silence left by Julian's exit, Maya felt her knees threaten to buckle. The strength that had held her up for the past 20 minutes evaporated, leaving her feeling hollowed out and fragile. She gripped the edge of a nearby table to steady herself. It was too much. It was too fast. She had walked into work expecting to serve pancakes and pour coffee, just another day of surviving. Now, she was the reluctant hero of a viral video, the catalyst for a CEO's downfall. Eleanor Vance walked over to her, her heels clicking softly on the floor. She stopped a respectful distance away. "Maya," she said, her voice now gentle. "Are you all right?" Maya could only nod, unable to form words. "You don't have to work here another minute if you don't want to," Eleanor continued. "In fact, I'd like to offer you a different path. This incident has exposed a deep, systemic problem, not just in our company, but everywhere. We need to fix it. And I don't believe you can fix a problem without listening to the people who have lived it." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I want to create a new position at Croft Enterprises, Director of Community Equity and Empowerment. It's not a PR stunt. It's not charity. It's a real job with a real budget and real power to make changes. To create policies that protect our employees, to build partnerships with communities we've ignored. I need someone with integrity, with courage, and with a perspective we sorely lack at the executive level. I need you." Tears welled in Maya's eyes, blurring the diner into a watercolor painting. I don't have a college degree," she stammered. "I don't know anything about corporate policy." "You have a PhD in dignity," Eleanor replied with a small, genuine smile. "And you have something far more valuable than a degree. You have a spine of steel. We can teach you the rest." The applause started again, but this time it was different. It wasn't scattered or hesitant. It was a warm, rolling wave of support that filled the entire diner. It wasn't for the kick. It was for her character, her resilience, her quiet strength. Months later, Maya sat in a corner office with a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Chicago skyline. A sleek nameplate on her mahogany desk read, "Maya Washington, Director of Community Equity and Empowerment." She still visited the Sunrise Diner sometimes, sitting in a booth and ordering a simple black coffee. Not to work, but to remember, to stay grounded. One afternoon, she saw a new waitress, a young girl with nervous eyes and hesitant steps, being hassled by a difficult customer. After the customer left, Maya watched the girl retreat to the counter, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Maya walked over, leaving a $50 tip on her own table. She leaned in and said softly to the young waitress, "Hey, stand tall. You are worth more than they will ever let you believe." The girl looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. Maya gave her a warm, knowing smile. The woman who was once silenced by insults was now using her voice to build a fortress for others. And it all started because one man picked the wrong woman to break on the wrong day. Comment respect down below if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. What Julian did was unacceptable, but Maya's response was powerful. What would you have done in her shoes? Share your thoughts, subscribe for more true-to-life stories, and let's keep this conversation going.